What if everything you have been told about aging is wrong? Not slightly wrong, not outdated by a decade, but fundamentally dangerously wrong in a way that has quietly stolen independence from millions of people who never deserved to lose it. I have spent more than 2 decades sitting across from patients in their 70s and 80s, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the most damaging thing we ever told older adults was to slow down, take it easy, and accept decline as though it were as inevitable as sunrise. It is not inevitable. And the research, the real research coming out of the most respected institutions in the world right now, is finally catching up to what I have watched with my own eyes for 20 years. Stay with me, because what I am about to share with you does not just challenge conventional wisdom, it overturns it entirely. And the single most powerful habit on this list, the one I will reveal at the very end, is something that fewer than 12% of adults over 75 do consistently. Something that Johns Hopkins researchers have publicly called the most underutilized longevity intervention available to aging adults without a prescription. You will not want to miss it. My name is Dr. Ethan, and before we go any further, I want to ask you something personal. Drop your age in the comments right now. Whether you are 68, 74, 81, or somewhere else on that spectrum entirely, I want to know where you are, and I want to know which of these habits you already feel strong in. I read every single comment, every one. This community is not background noise to me. It is the entire reason I keep making these videos. So leave your age and your thoughts below, and let's have a real conversation about what your body and brain are still capable of, because I promise you, it is far more than anyone has given you credit for. Now, let me tell you about a landmark study that stopped me cold the first time I read it. Researchers at the Stanford Center on Longevity followed more than 4,200 adults between the ages of 70 and 90 for 12 consecutive years. What they discovered was not subtle. Adults who maintained just 4 or more of the specific daily habits I am going to walk you through today were 61% less likely to experience what the researchers called accelerated functional decline. That is the clinical phrase for the rapid, devastating loss of independence that sends people into assisted living years, sometimes decades, before it needs to happen. 61%. I need you to sit with that number for a moment, because it is not a small statistical blip. It is the difference between driving yourself to your own appointments and waiting for someone else to take you. It is the difference between remembering every grandchild's birthday without writing it down and watching that clarity slowly fog over. It is the difference between a life lived on your terms and a life managed on someone else's schedule. And it comes down to behavior, not genetics, not luck, not expensive interventions. Behavior. Daily, repeatable, science-backed behavior that most people your age have quietly abandoned without ever realizing what they were giving up. We are going to count down from number 6 to number 1. And I want to warn you right now, the further down this list we go, the more surprising it becomes. By the time we reach number 1, you may find yourself rethinking your entire daily routine. Let us begin. The 6th habit sounds almost insultingly simple at first. Drinking water. You have heard it your whole life. Stay hydrated. Drink 8 glasses a day. You know the refrain. But here is what nobody tells you, and what changes everything once you understand it. After the age of 70, hydration does not work the same way it did at 45. Your kidneys have lost approximately 40% of their filtering efficiency. Your body's thirst signals, the biological alarm system that tells you when you need water, become significantly blunted. You can be severely dehydrated and feel almost nothing. No parched throat, no desperate thirst, just a quiet, creeping deterioration in how your brain and body function. So gradual, you might mistake it for aging itself. Think of your bloodstream as a river-based delivery system. Every nutrient, every molecule of oxygen, every signal your brain sends to your muscles travels through that river. When the river runs low, the delivery's slow, packages get lost. The whole system begins to break down quietly and invisibly. A study from the European Journal of Nutrition involving 3,500 adults over the age of 70 found that those who maintained consistent daily hydration above a threshold of nearly 2 liters showed a 38% lower rate of urinary tract infections, a 29% reduction in falls because dehydration dramatically impairs both balance and reaction time, and significantly better performance on short-term memory tests. The brain is approximately 75% water. A drop of just 2% in your hydration level causes measurable cognitive impairment at any age. After 75, that effect is amplified because your brain's compensatory mechanisms are already working harder than they were a generation ago just to maintain what feels like a normal day. The seniors who do this exceptionally well do not simply sip water when they happen to remember it. They drink 12 to 16 ounces first thing every morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else crosses their lips. The body loses fluid overnight through breathing and mild perspiration, and after 75, that overnight deficit is typically 30% higher than it was in midlife. Then they drink a small glass with every meal and one in the mid-afternoon, creating a rhythm that keeps their system consistently supplied rather than swinging between overhydration and quiet deficit. And here is the detail that most people miss entirely. Pair that morning water with a pinch of high-quality sea salt or an electrolyte tablet. After 75, the kidneys have increasing difficulty retaining sodium. Without adequate sodium, plain water passes through your system before your cells can actually absorb it. You are drinking, but not hydrating. This single adjustment, this precise, timed, electrolyte-supported approach to water is what separates strategic hydration from casual sipping. I have watched it transform patients' mental clarity, balance, and afternoon energy in a matter of weeks, not months, weeks. The fifth habit is one that I see misunderstood constantly, and the misunderstanding itself is part of what makes this so urgent. Resistance-based movement at least twice per week. Now, before your mind goes to gyms and heavy barbells and things that feel dangerous or impossible, I need to be very clear. I am not talking about any of that. I am talking about any movement that asks your muscles to work against a force. A resistance band, a light dumbbell, a wall push-up, carrying groceries with deliberate, intentional effort. The equipment is almost irrelevant. The principle is everything. After the age of 75, your body undergoes a process called anabolic resistance. In plain language, your muscle cells become significantly less responsive to the signals that tell them to grow and maintain themselves. What this means in practical terms is that your body needs more intentional stimulus to hold on to the same amount of muscle that a 50-year-old would maintain with half the effort. And when that stimulus is absent, something called sarcopenia begins, the progressive, relentless loss of muscle mass and strength that research from the Mayo Clinic has linked to a 47% increased risk of falls, a 53% higher likelihood of being unable to perform basic daily tasks within 5 years, and a measurably shortened overall lifespan. Your muscles are not lazy. They are not failing you. They are simply harder to reach than they used to be, and they are waiting for a reason to stay strong. A study that followed adults aged 75 to 85 who began twice-weekly resistance training found something that genuinely surprised even the researchers. After just 10 weeks, participants showed an average 37% increase in leg strength and a 28% improvement in balance scores. But the part that catches most people off guard is this. Those same participants also showed measurable improvement in insulin sensitivity, which directly affects energy levels, systemic inflammation, and cognitive function. Because when you perform resistance exercise, you are not just building muscle. You are rebuilding the energy infrastructure of your entire body. The mitochondria in your muscle cells, the microscopic power plants that fuel everything you do, begin to regenerate more efficiently. You feel stronger, you think more clearly, you sleep better. It cascades in every direction at once. The practical prescription is simple. 2 to 3 sessions per week, 20 to 30 minutes each, focusing on the large muscle groups, legs, hips, and back. Resistance bands are ideal because they provide meaningful challenge without the joint impact of traditional weights. And here is the timing detail that makes all the difference after 75. Perform your resistance session within 30 minutes of consuming 25 to 30 grams of protein because the anabolic window, the period during which your muscles can most efficiently absorb protein for repair and rebuilding, is shorter and less forgiving in an aging body. Timing is not optional here. It is essential. The fourth habit is one that most people think they understand but almost universally underestimate. A consistent, purposeful sleep schedule. Not just more sleep, not just earlier bedtimes. A schedule with intention behind every element of it. And the reason this matters so profoundly after 75 is something most people never hear from their doctors. After the age of 75, your circadian rhythm, your body's internal 24-hour clock, begins to weaken in ways that go far beyond simply feeling tired. Your brain produces roughly 70% less melatonin than it did at 30. Your slow-wave sleep, the deepest and most physically restorative phase of the sleep cycle, decreases by up to 80% from what it was in your 30s. This is the phase during which human growth hormone is released, the hormone responsible for cellular repair, immune system maintenance, and muscle recovery. Lose this phase consistently, and your body's capacity to rebuild itself overnight diminishes to a fraction of what it once was. But here is the part that should genuinely concern you, because most people do not know this. A study from the University of California, Berkeley, found that adults over 70 with disrupted sleep patterns showed a 68% higher accumulation of amyloid plaques in the brain, the same plaques researchers associate with Alzheimer's disease. Poor sleep after 75 is not just fatigue. It is a neurological crisis unfolding in slow motion. The seniors who age best do not just get more sleep, they protect it with the kind of precision most people reserve for their medications. They go to bed within the same 30-minute window every single night, including weekends, because consistency is what trains the circadian rhythm to function optimally. They keep their bedroom between 65 and 68 degrees, because body temperature regulation during sleep becomes less efficient with age, and a cooler environment actively supports the deep sleep phases your brain depends on. They avoid screens for 60 minutes before bed, not solely because of blue light, but because mental stimulation keeps the prefrontal cortex active in ways that delay sleep onset by an average of 47 minutes in adults over 70, according to Harvard Medical School research. And 10 minutes of slow, deliberate diaphragmatic breathing before bed, the kind that fully inflates the lower lungs on each inhale, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and reduces nighttime cortisol levels by up to 22%, making it dramatically easier to reach and sustain the slow-wave sleep your aging brain is so desperately hungry for. The third habit is where I see the most dangerous and widespread misconception among seniors. And I say that with complete sincerity, as someone who has watched this particular misunderstanding cause genuine, preventable harm. The idea that you need less protein as you age is not just wrong, it may be one of the most harmful pieces of nutritional folklore that has ever passed down through generations of casual medical advice. The truth is not just that older adults need the same amount of protein, they need more. After 75, due to anabolic resistance, your body requires 50 to 75% more dietary protein per pound of body weight than a healthy 30-year-old to achieve the same muscle maintenance effect. Read that again, 50 to 75% more. Yet the majority of seniors I see in practice are consuming half the protein their bodies require, often because appetite decreases with age and high-carbohydrate foods feel simpler and easier to prepare. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition involving more than 2,700 adults aged 70 to 85 found that those who consumed adequate protein distributed across 3 or more meals daily maintained significantly more muscle mass, experienced 41% lower rates of hospitalization due to fall-related injuries, and showed markedly stronger immune responses to common infections like influenza and pneumonia. Think of protein as the bricks your body uses to rebuild itself every single night while you sleep. Your body tears down old, damaged tissue and replaces it with new. Without enough bricks, the reconstruction is incomplete. Over months and years, that structural deficit does not stay silent. It announces itself in falls, in lost strength, in a grip that no longer holds what it used to, in a body that starts to feel like a stranger's. The practical approach is this: aim for 25 to 35 grams of protein at each of your 3 main meals. That is approximately 4 to 5 ounces of chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, or legumes per sitting. The reason distribution matters so profoundly after 75 is that aging muscles can only utilize approximately 35 to 40 grams of protein per sitting for actual tissue synthesis. Beyond that threshold, the excess gets oxidized for energy rather than used for repair. Spreading your intake across the day ensures that every gram you consume is going where your body needs it most. And pair each protein meal with a small amount of vitamin C, an orange, some bell pepper, a splash of lemon juice, because vitamin C is essential for collagen synthesis, which works in direct tandem with dietary protein to maintain not just muscle, but the connective tissue, the joint cartilage, the skin integrity that collectively hold your body together in the truest possible sense. Now, we arrive at the top 2 habits on this list, and I promised you early on that at least one of them would genuinely surprise you. The second habit is one that is so thoroughly backed by hard science that I find it almost inexcusable how rarely it is discussed in clinical settings. But before I reveal it, I want to say something. If this video has already given you something valuable, something you did not know before you pressed play, please take one moment right now and share it with someone you love who is between 70 and 90 years old. Because what I am about to tell you is the kind of information that can genuinely, measurably extend not just the length of someone's life, but the quality of every year remaining in it. The second habit is daily intentional social engagement. And I already know what some of you are thinking. That sounds nice, but it is not medical. It is not a real intervention. It is the kind of soft advice you give people when there is nothing else to offer. That thinking is completely wrong, and the data that overturns it is some of the most sobering research in all of modern gerontology. A study analyzing data from more than 300,000 adults across multiple decades found that social isolation carried a mortality risk equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Not 5, not 10, 15. Being chronically alone is as dangerous to your lifespan as being a daily smoker. The National Institute on Aging has found that loneliness accelerates cognitive decline by up to 64% in adults over 75, increases the risk of dementia by 41%, and dramatically elevates inflammatory markers in the blood that directly damage cardiovascular tissue, immune function, and the neural connectivity that keeps your mind sharp and responsive. Here's the physiological reason this happens, because it is not mystical or vague. It is chemistry, meaningful social interaction, real, engaged, present moment human connection, not passive proximity, not watching television in the same room as someone, but actual conversation with eye contact and emotion and reciprocity triggers the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin suppresses cortisol, reduces systemic inflammation, and activates the prefrontal cortex in ways that keep your neural pathways dense, connected, and alive. Think of your social brain as a muscle with the same rules as every other muscle in your body. Use it consistently, and it stays strong. Leave it quiet for weeks at a time, and the neurons begin to prune. After 75, neuroplasticity has already decreased significantly, which means that unused pathways are far harder to restore than they would have been a decade earlier. Every week of isolation is a week of structural brain change that cannot simply be reversed by picking up the phone when you finally feel ready. The prescription here is not complicated, but it must be intentional and it must be daily. One genuinely engaged social interaction every single day. A phone call counts if it is real and present and emotionally involved. A community group, a faith gathering, a walking partner, a standing lunch date with a neighbor. What does not count in terms of neurological benefit is passive social presence. You must be thinking, responding, disagreeing, laughing, remembering, sharing. That is the stimulus. That is what keeps the architecture of your mind structurally intact. And the synergy tip here is one of the most powerful on this entire list. Pair your social engagement with physical movement whenever possible. A walk with a friend, a gentle exercise class with others, gardening with a neighbor. Research shows that combining social interaction with even light physical activity produces a synergistic effect on something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that is significantly greater than either behavior produces alone. Think of it as fertilizer for your brain cells, and the combination of movement and connection floods your brain with more of it than either one ever could by itself. And now we arrive at number 1. The habit that fewer than 12% of adults over 75 maintain consistently. The one that Johns Hopkins researchers have called the most underutilized longevity intervention available to aging adults without a prescription. the one that I deliberately saved for the end, because once you understand the science behind it, everything else on this list will make even more sense in relation to it. And I want you to notice something. This is not diet. It is not exercise in the traditional sense. Most cardiologists never bring it up. Most general practitioners do not have time for it in a 15-minute appointment. But the research coming out of institutions like Johns Hopkins and the University of Edinburgh suggests it may be the single greatest predictor of cognitive and physical independence after the age of 75. The first habit is daily purposeful cognitive challenge. And I need to be very precise here because this is not about crossword puzzles or passive reading, though both have value. This is about something more specific, more demanding, and more transformative. The daily practice of learning something genuinely new, a skill, a language, a musical instrument, a new form of creative expression, something that forces your brain into a state of productive discomfort, a state where it must build new pathways rather than travel familiar ones. Here is why this is number one above everything else on this list. After the age of 75, your brain begins to preferentially rely on established neural pathways. It becomes extraordinarily efficient at doing familiar things and extraordinarily reluctant to build new ones. This is not a character flaw. It is a survival mechanism, an aging brain conserving metabolic energy by favoring the known. But here is the devastating irony of that mechanism. The very preference for familiarity that feels comfortable and safe is also the primary mechanism by which cognitive reserve is depleted. And cognitive reserve, the brain's resilience buffer, its ability to compensate for age-related structural changes and still function at a high level, is the single most powerful protection you have against dementia, against cognitive decline, against the slow fading of the person you have spent a lifetime becoming. Think of it like the RAM in a computer. The more cognitive reserve you carry into your 70s and 80s, the more structural damage your brain can absorb before you begin experiencing symptoms. And the only way to build and maintain it is to give your brain a genuine reason to grow. Research from the University of Edinburgh following more than 1,000 adults from their 70s into their late 80s found that those who engaged in novel, challenging cognitive activities for at least 30 minutes per day showed a 47% slower rate of brain atrophy on MRI scans, maintained significantly better processing speed and episodic memory, and were 38% less likely to receive a dementia diagnosis over the following decade. A separate study found that seniors who described their daily lives as intellectually engaging showed brain function equivalent to adults 10 full years younger on standardized neurological assessments. 10 years, not 2, 10. The mechanism is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. While neuroplasticity does decline with age, it never disappears entirely. The brain retains a meaningful capacity for structural change well into the 80s. But only if it receives sufficient stimulus. Novel learning is that stimulus. Learning a new language activates 5 distinct regions of the brain simultaneously and has been shown to delay the onset of dementia by an average of 4.5 years. Learning a musical instrument engages fine motor control, auditory processing, memory, and emotional regulation in a coordinated, simultaneous way that no other single activity replicates. Even learning to cook a new cuisine from scratch, because it requires reading, sequencing, sensory attention, and motor precision, provides the kind of multi-domain engagement that keeps your brain building rather than simply maintaining. The practical approach is this: choose one genuinely new skill every 3 to 4 months and spend at least 20 to 30 minutes per day actively learning it. The word actively is everything. Watching someone play guitar on a screen is not learning guitar. Sitting with an instrument in your hands, struggling through a chord, feeling the resistance of something genuinely difficult, that struggle is exactly where the neurological benefit lives. It is the cognitive equivalent of resistance training for your muscles. The difficulty is not the obstacle. The difficulty is the point. And the synergy tip that completes this habit beautifully: pair your daily cognitive challenge with omega-3 fatty acid intake, specifically the form called DHA, found in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, or in high-quality fish oil supplements. DHA is the primary structural fat of brain cell membranes. Research from the Framingham Heart Study shows that adults with higher DHA levels demonstrate significantly stronger neuroplasticity responses to cognitive training. In other words, DHA does not just support brain health in a general way, it specifically amplifies the benefit of the learning you are doing. It is the fertilizer beneath the seed. The learning plants the seed. The DHA makes it take root. Now let me bring all 6 of these together for a moment, because the real power of this list is not in any single habit. It is in how they compound each other. Strategic hydration sharpens the brain enough to engage in real learning. Resistance movement rebuilds the physical strength that makes daily independence possible. Consistent sleep gives your body the repair time it needs to consolidate everything you are doing while you are awake. Deliberate protein intake ensures that the tissue your body is rebuilding each night is being built with adequate materials. Daily social engagement floods your brain with the chemical environment it needs to stay structurally intact. And purposeful cognitive challenge is the daily signal that tells every system in your body that you are not finished, that you are still growing, that your brain and body should keep investing in infrastructure rather than standing down. Together, these 6 habits do not add their benefits, they multiply them. I want to close with something I say from a place of genuine conviction, not as a doctor delivering a prescription, but as someone who has sat across from enough people in the 75 to 85 age range to understand what is truly at stake. This period of life is treated far too often as a countdown, a quiet waiting, a narrowing of horizons. And I want to challenge that with everything I have, because the research I have shared with you today points to something that medicine is only beginning to fully appreciate. The body and the mind at 75, at 80, at 85 retain a remarkable, stubborn, almost defiant capacity for resilience, not in spite of age, in dialogue with it, in partnership with it. These 6 habits are not about reversing time or pretending the years have not passed. They are about making the most extraordinary possible use of every year that remains. They are about carrying your own groceries, remembering your grandchildren's names without a list, driving yourself to appointments, laughing until your eyes water at dinner with someone who matters deeply to you. That is what independence looks like. That is what quality of life actually means. And I promise you, because I have seen it, I have watched it happen in patients who were told by other doctors that there was nothing left to optimize. It is never, ever, at any age, too late to begin. Leave your age in the comments. Tell me which habit you feel strongest in right now and which one you are going to start building this week. I will be reading every single response because this conversation is the one that matters most. Take good care of yourself because you have earned it and you are absolutely worth the effort.